Hey, I'm up at the farm today and we're going to get started on maple syrup season. It's the middle of February and the temperatures are getting about right. So we're going to start setting things up today and we'll be making maple syrup really soon. Well, there's a stainless steel work table and the maple syrup evaporator. It doesn't look like much now, but it has to go on the driveway first, and we'll build the sugar shack around it. Every year around this time, a group of old friends gets together at Peter's farm and builds a sugar shack in order to make 100% pure New England maple syrup. A sugar shack, at least in our case, is a rickety building that's thrown together every year in the course of one day. The purpose of the building is to house the monstrous maple sap evaporator and all the ancillary equipment that's required to make maple syrup. However, most of us would say it's to keep us warm and dry and out of the cold. This annual late winter activity has been going on here for well over a dozen years. The annual sugar shack build begins by taking the parts that compose the sugar shack out from under the old barn. These components are stacked in the driveway near the evaporator in sections that include the frame, the roofing, the siding, and the mechanical works. Yesterday, Peter, his son Andrew, and I started the project by emptying the barn of all of the components to build the sugar shack, which we laid on the driveway section by section. As you can see here, the rest of the crew arrived in force today. It should also be noted that most of what you're going to see here in this video is certainly not OSHA approved. Prior to the start of filming, the team erected the frame of the sugar shack, which is approximately 10 feet by 12 feet. Once the frame is established and leveled, the horizontal girts are bolted to the side of the frame. The painstaking process of leveling the frame using a variety of 2x6 shims that you can see laying on the ground was not filmed. You can thank me for that later. It is always very painstaking. We have enough people and certainly enough supervisors on the job to get it done in one day. However, there is often a lot of standing around as certain components can only be placed by a limited number of individuals at a time. But it's always great to have some extra people around. That's Haskell that just joined us. He lives across the street from Peter. This is often the first time of the year that many of us have seen each other. So it's always great to be able to chat with each other and see what everyone in the family has been up to. This tends to happen in force when there's a coffee break. I'm in the room where they make cheese, as you can see from the molds up there. But more importantly, there's heat in here, so when it gets cold, you come here to warm up. And one of the fruits of our labor is bourbon-flavored maple syrup. And this is aged in a bourbon cask over the year and then bottled. In the barn is a self-serve store based on the honor system. Take what you need and leave your money in the tin box. It's truly wonderful that this business operates in such a fashion. It just makes you feel good about people again. Besides fresh maple syrup, Liz and Peter sell their own fresh eggs and amazing cheeses, as well as a large variety of locally grown foods. Well, coffee break is over. Back to the build. Once the side girts are secured, the roof is put on. When the roof is screwed into the rafters of the building, the structure really starts to firm up. Once the roof is completed, the side walls start to go in, but they can't be fully completed until the front wall with the entry door is done. Every year, the front wall is a source of consternation for the entire group. I would suggest that the more experienced workers tend to stay away from constructing the front door. Fortunately, Peter takes charge of this particular assignment and directs the door building activity for those that are brave enough. You would think that we would record this information as to how the door and the front wall was put together, and we do, every year. But whoever takes the pictures typically loses them over the course of a year, and we end up starting all over again. There are markings on all of the door components that indicate where they should go. However, sometimes the meanings of the markings are misunderstood with the passage of time. I'm sure they meant something at the time they were written that made sense to everyone who was within earshot. However, as time passes, these cryptic markings tend to lose their meaning. No clearer example of this phenomenon could be made than the revelation that all the roof rafters that were marked in years past as going on the right-hand side of the Sugar Shack frame were dutifully placed on the right-hand side of the roof. However, after some time had passed, it became clear to those who had previously marked the rafters as being either on the right or the left, they were facing the street, while those who were placing them on the Sugar Shack frame were facing the barn, which is opposite the street. Once this change of directional paradigms was recognized, the roof went up fairly quickly. Of course, like we do every year, we all promise to remember which way was right and which way was left so we can do it correctly next year. We'll see if that happens. Well, it seems for a while that nothing is really getting done. Then, after a certain amount of time, you start to notice that things are actually starting to come together. As the pieces on the ground become less in number, the Sugar Shack starts to take shape and solidify. There are no particular assignments for all the various steps that are required to complete the building of the Sugar Shack. Everyone helps where someone needs help, or they initiate a new building activity where they see an opening. After so many years of doing this, we all know that it's essentially framing, roofing, siding, and then the front wall, which includes the door. After all this comes the cupola section. The cupola needs to be placed up on the roof. Knowing that the roof is made of aging and delaminating plywood, only those that are physically well balanced and stout of heart, those are the only folks that would ever consider going up on the roof to put the cupola in place. Let's just say that getting up on that particular roof is not for the faint of heart.
Here you can see that I position myself below the roofline to be a spotter for Jeff, while Josh goes around the back of the shack to position himself below Alex. Should Jeff or Alex fall, Josh and I would essentially have the same helpful effect as an old mattress. But I think the gesture was appreciated. Well, once the cupola was up, we were just about done, and after a few more tweaks, it won't be long until we're making maple syrup.
Well, it was a long day's work, but it's all done now. The Sugar Shack is ready to go, and with a little tweaking, we'll be making maple syrup real soon. This is Scott for the XFed Homestead. We'll see you next time.